So I did a recent video talking about LGBTQ representation in animation, where I looked at how animation has been improving over the past 20 to 30 years. The link to that should be somewhere, so have a look around if you fancy watching it. Anyway, I received a comment telling me that I hadn't in fact gone back far enough, as LGBTQ representation didn't start in the 90s, oh no, it's been present from the very beginning of animation. So this video is going to be taking a look at some of the very first uses of LGBTQ characters in animation, going as far back as the 1930s. Let's begin with what is allegedly the first portrayal of an LGBTQ character in animation, appearing in the 1933 Flip the Frog short entitled Soda Squirt. So right off the bat, this is a portrayal that I'm pretty conflicted with. I mean, I can't fully say whether or not it's a bad portrayal or a good portrayal. It's probably bad, but let's see. So Flip the Frog has just opened a soda shop, and at one point a stereotypical caricature of a gay man enters. This on its own isn't too bad, as all the characters are caricatures in some way, and what with limited sound and lack of colour, there's going to be an inherent lack of nuance in any of these characters. The man orders a chocolate milkshake, and because Flip the Frog has been kissed by, this caricature, he absent-mindedly makes a drink consisting of hair tonic, motor oil, Tax, pesticide and pen ink. Here I feel it's important to point out that Flip the Frog hasn't maliciously made the drink because the guy is gay. He's just some horny little frog who's got distracted. So the man then drinks this cocktail and turns into a demonic monster thing. Here, him being gay isn't the catalyst for the events that follow, he just happens to be gay and then turn into a monster because of the drink. This would have equally worked with any other non-LGBTQ character. The thing is though, there was obviously a conscious decision to have the character be gay, and when viewed within the context of public perception of gay people at the time, it does become a bit difficult to defend it as merely a coincidence. So he's gone all monstrous and is just destroying the place. Then once Flip sprays him with a perfume called Pansy, he turns back to his normal self and then dances out the room. Okay, that probably wouldn't have worked if he wasn't gay. So it didn't totally demonise LGBTQ people, but all this stuff is certainly questionable. So let's move on now from Flip the questionable frog over to one of the most famous characters of early animation, being Betty Boop. So back in 1933 there were no regulations in place to say what could and couldn't be shown in animated films, or films in general, as it was still a relatively new medium. As such, we ended up with characters like the hypersexualized character of Betty Boop. The first Betty Boop cartoon we're going to look at is the 1933 short called Betty Boop's Penthouse. Here we have our two male protagonists voyeuristically watching Betty Boop. Then a monster shows up, as seems to be pretty common in these old cartoons, just bring a monster in. It then pushes them both out the way, so it can now lust over Betty Boop as well. So most of this cartoon is just our protagonists, our antagonists, everyone basically, just perving over Betty Boop. Little bit of a side note here, Laura Mulvey is a famous feminist film theorist who talked about the idea of sockophilia of the male gaze, basically stating that women in films are shown from a male perspective. And I don't think I've ever seen a more clear example of this than literally every character in this cartoon, regardless of their initial motives, gets sidetracked and just spends the rest of the cartoon staring at Betty Boop in a swimsuit and high heels, watering her flowers. Why is she wearing a swimsuit and high heels to water her flowers? I don't know, but I bet it wasn't a woman's idea to draw her that way. What was I talking about again? Oh yeah, LGBTQ themes. So, there's a part where Betty Boop is watering the plants in her garden, and one plant goes to kiss another plant, and then exclaims, "Just over the drive." Did you hear that? If not, I'll play it again. Just over the drive. So the plant says, "It's a pansy," and then backs off, which, whilst admittedly is a pretty good use of wordplay, it also is a perfect example of homophobia on screen. Perhaps worse than that though are the implications of that scene. it can take pansies around 14 weeks to bloom, so these two plants were in pots next to each other for at least 3 months. And this fucking guy right here, didn't even know if the plant was male or female, gay or straight, before trying to stick his anther down this other plant's stigma. Had he even spoken to the other plant? My guess is no. He thinks he can just take what he wants without the consequences, assuming the other plant wouldn't speak up. And he's probably right. No plant has ever won or even filed a case of sexual harassment. That's true, that's completely true, you can look that up. Anyway, back to the monster whose mad lust has now driven him to climb across the roof to do unspeakable things to Betty Boop. So then she sprays him with plant food and he immediately becomes a flower and then loses interest in Betty and just wants to do some admittedly great rotoscope dancing. Is this also homophobic? Probably. There is, however, another Betty Boop cartoon, this one called Bimbo's Initiation from 1931, and there's a scene in it that people point to as being LGBTQ and somewhat homophobic, but that one I just don't see. So, in this cartoon, these people want Bimbo to join their secret society, but Bimbo's not having any of it. So he's trying to escape and they're not letting him. And there's one scene where a sword comes through the wall and tries to attack Bimbo's backside. It then starts licking its little sword lips and starts trying to bite him. Then it grows, and in all honesty, while sure it's a weird scene, I personally think people are just seeing phallic connotations. I mean, it's clearly not a metaphor for a glory hole. Right? Right? Not in the 1930s, surely. If you disagree, then be sure to let me know, but personally, I'm not seeing it. All of the shorts I've talked about so far came out prior to the introduction of the Hays Code in 1934, which was a standardised practice which all TV and film must follow, prohibiting the portrayal of profanity, suggestive nudity, graphic or realistic violence, sexual persuasions and rape. Sexual persuasions, being the one we're focusing on today, being banned, meant that any form of LGBTQ portrayal, good or bad, kind of went out the window over the next 30 to 40 years. Well, not quite, as there was one anthropomorphic pansexual rabbit who snuck under the radar. Bugs Bunny, or at least what was to become Bugs Bunny, made his first appearance in 1938, in the short Porky's Hare Hunt, where it was established he had a wife and hundreds of kids. Although this short did also establish him as a hare and not a rabbit, so maybe we shouldn't take this one as entirely canon. His second appearance came the following year in the 1939 short Prest-O-Change-O. Here, a couple of dogs on the run from a dog catcher hide in a magician's house where Bugs Bunny is hanging out. Bugs, in his classic Agent of Chaos manner, then proceeds to mess with these poor dogs who are just searching for refuge, and he at one point does kiss one of the dogs. Now Bugs, what did we just say about the flower? No kissing people without consent. But anyway, this action may have presented him as gay in the eyes of its audience. He next showed up in Harem Scarum, also in 1939. Wait, Porky's Hare Hunt, now Harem Scarum? Is Bugs Bunny even a rabbit? Rabbit, hare, either way, this was the first time we saw the character cross-dressing as a woman. Here he dresses as a female dog in order to seduce the dog of what I believe is an early version of Elmer Fudd. This would have likely further cemented the idea of Bugs Bunny being gay, or at least LGBTQ, in the eyes of its 1930s audience. As we all know, Bugs Bunny would then go on to become even more gender fluid over the years, with even more and more elaborate costumes. Which, with Bugs being the likeable protagonist in many of his cartoons, this would cause him to be interpreted as an ambassador for LGBTQ. RuPaul, a man best known for bringing drag into the mainstream, said, "Bugs Bunny was my first introduction to drag," showing that this positive portrayal of drag, aimed at people of all ages but especially children, was likely influential in the development of many young people, and may have even normalised what many people at the time saw as taboo. So, to the best of my knowledge, that is everything in terms of LGBTQ representation in animation in the 1930s. If there's any that I missed, be sure to let me know in the comments, and I'm likely to be doing more of these LGBTQ animation videos in the near future, so be sure to subscribe if you want to see them. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it, a dislike if you didn't. I mean, you've been on YouTube before, you know what you're doing. Anyway, thanks for watching, I'll see you next time.